Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another adventure with All for One. I'm here with Reverend Gail, Reverend Dale, and Reverend Cheryl, and I am Reverend William. Today we have a great show for you. Reverend Dale is going to be leading us. But for right now, let's just be present in this moment. Allow your seat, your couch, whatever you're sitting on, just allow it to support you. And just feel your weight and the chair merge as one. Today, I'm starting off with gratitude. Gratitude for knowing the truth of all life, that there's only one thing happening, and that is the perfect unfoldment of spirit. So in that gratitude and in that recognition of that one life, I know that all here are divinely guided to freely express their ideas and their aha moments. So I know right now for all of us that the divinity within us is welcome to be freely expressed through each and every one of us. And over the course of this next hour, this time of sharing, this time of bonding, it allows the oneness to expand, to create more of itself through new ideas and new thoughts, new expressions, that the one love of all life is expanded, is acted upon. And I know each individual here has their own calling, has their own connection to that one life, with the desire to create more of that connection, of that awareness, to allow life to unfold. And through this show today, I know it unfolds perfectly. What needs to be said is said. What needs to be heard is heard. And so in that knowing, I am filled with gratitude, joy. I am filled with peace in my heart, knowing that all here are a divine expression of that one life. And in that recognition, I release my word as law right here and now. And together we say, and so it is. Well, good morning, good evening, and good night. Wherever you are on this planet, welcome. Today, I need some more coffee, excuse me. Oh my gosh. Reverend Dale is going to be leading us, and she has put forth a great question for us, which as soon as don't you just love it when your phone goes to sleep? I'm perfect. This is unfolding perfectly. It couldn't be anything less than a William moment. Anyway, here is her question that she put forth. If you could go back 10 years, or if you could go back where your consciousness was 10 years ago compared to where it is now, what major shifts do you see? That's a pretty deep question. And honestly, I don't know if going back only 10 years is enough. I mean, to be where I am today with going through ministerial, to go through practitioner, yes, there's been a lot of changes, but the foundation and the awareness that my life is a divine expression of that one life has always been the undercurrent. But as far as the consciousness goes, it has definitely deepened for me. It hasn't changed, but I've become more self-aware of my connection to that life, which in turn has caused me to see a connection to all life. People that I may have had differences with and held on to that type of thought. I release. I see their divinity, and I allow them to express their own individualized divinity. And so in that awareness, my consciousness has exponentially grown. And I just can't wait to see what happens in the next 10 years. Because even this first year of us becoming reverends has changed so much. But it's so funny, it changes, but yet it's the same. And that's the dichotomy, I think is the word. But that's the brilliance of the one life expanding and growing, but yet never changing. That is the blows my mind thoughts that I have as I fall asleep at night. So the consciousness that I have is just, I'm enjoying the ride. Every single day is a gift, regardless of what comes up. And that's how my consciousness has changed, realizing that every day, regardless of what's coming up, is a gift. Now I'd like to turn it over to Reverend Cheryl and see what her insights are. So thank you, Reverend Cheryl.
Oh, thank you, Reverend William. So that's such a, I never stop and think about how much growth I've experienced. It's more a case of just the evolving that has occurred in my life. And it just makes me think about, where was my consciousness? This was before practitioner training, before everything. So I'd already started attending the center. I'd started there in October of 2007, but I had really found this just profound difference in my life once I started attending there. But my real growth, even going through ministerial school and practitioner training, my real growth was in practitioner training in that first year. I had always thought that life was coming at me rather than me attracting what was coming into my life. And so the difference for me was to recognize that if all this stuff is occurring in my life and that I'm creating it, that gave me such a profound feeling of trust and peace and serenity, knowing that I am responsible for what's occurring. It just freed me up completely to just go on with my life. And so when things, instead of seeing things that when they occurred in my life as something that was like a punishment or I must have done something wrong, instead it just freed me up to look at each situation and realize it did not define me. What it did was it was something I had to walk through as part of my growth process. And ever since I started looking at things from that point of view, it just opened up my whole mind to a whole different way of seeing and perceiving life. And, and it's really odd because then you start seeing in other people when they're walking through situations, you start recognizing what's going on here and where their growth is. And so it really helped me a lot once I was a practitioner, when people would come to me and say, this is happening, my whole life, everything's coming at me. And I would just say, wow, it sounds like you're in for a great big growth spurt here, because so many things just need to be cleaned out and taken care of and replaced. And so I just started looking at it that way. Something was calling me to examine what was going on in my life and just open myself up to the possibility that this was not something that was bad that was occurring, no matter how it might appear. It was just something that was necessary and part of me fulfilling my spiritual path. So for me, 10 years ago, whole different story than it is today. So now we're going to go to beautiful Reverend Gail and let her tell us what she feels.
So thank you, Reverend Cheryl. And Reverend William, I agree with you. This is a really deep and interesting question. And after I thought about it and had to give it a lot of thought, my answer is that I believe my fundamental consciousness was the same 10 years ago as it is today. In science of mind parlance, we often say we must awaken to who we really are. We've all heard that, right? And it's as if there's a goal to be reached. But I know I am, and I know you are already all of that. And when I remind myself to be the change that I want to see in the world, I actually know I do not need to be anything new. I just need to simply remember who I already am. And so I believe it is my understanding of this truth and my ability to remember who I am that comes forth with greater awareness than it did 10 years ago. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Reverend Dale.
Thank you. Well, I am one to plunge into the depths. I love to go deep, and you guys are so deep. So thank you for all your answers. I love them all. For me, 10 years ago seems like a lifetime. And I was a practitioner already, but what's so funny to me is one of my greatest expansions, I would have to say, is my faith has deepened tenfold, as my inner freedom as well. I feel like I've really expanded into a whole new territory within myself, within my consciousness. And it's funny, we're training practitioners right now, Dr. Laura and I, and we talk a lot about faith right now. They just did a term paper about faith, and it's cool because it's like they say they've arrived at this place. They've arrived at this place of having such deep conviction and knowing of who they are, like Reverend Gail just talked to. They so know who they are. And my answer to them, or my comment to them, is there's even more to open up to. There's even more to see, because with consciousness expansion, there's no destination. It's simply opening up to the truth of who you are, as Reverend Gail said. It's opening up to the depth and the spiritual wholeness that you are in greater ways, in greater experiences of what that is to you in your everyday life. So thank you, my beloved Revs, for playing this fun game with me. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into our topic today. So, we talk about consciousness, as we did with our question. We talk about consciousness quite a bit in New Thought and in our center. And somebody said to me, well, what is this consciousness thing? And why are you guys always talking about it? And I thought, well, there's a decent subject for All for One to contemplate and dig into. So, this thing about expanding ourselves and coming into a greater understanding of our spirituality, these things that are like consciousness or concepts that we teach everybody to think about and to discover about themselves and to contemplate, these things help us to find out this who we are, and knowing what we can do with ourselves, and how to understand life, and how to understand who we are in new ways that we never thought possible. So we have these concepts that we teach in Science of Mind that allow you to open up to a greater depth of who you are. And consciousness is one of those things. And while there are some concepts that we teach that talk about limitation, consciousness is one of those that is expansive, that teaches us about a greater ability that we have within ourselves to create our lives and to bring a better life into reality. And Dr. Holmes, Ernest Holmes, said, the inherent nature of man is forever seeking to express in terms of freedom. And one of my favorite things about Ernest Holmes is he does talk a lot about this freedom that we have to be who we are, the authentic, and to live a life that is boundless, to bring forth infinite possibilities. And for me, the way we do that is through understanding our consciousness and looking at it and understanding how we can utilize consciousness to create the life that we want to live. And so we ask ourselves, what is consciousness? And Ernest Holmes says it's mental awareness. The dictionary says it's a person's awareness or perception of something. To broaden that out, it's the accumulation of all our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes. It's stuff that actually ends up feeding into what we might call our energetic atmosphere. It's who we are. It's how we feel. It's what we bring out into the world, that collective who we are at any given moment. Because the cool thing about consciousness, as we've all displayed here, is it can change, and we can change it using intention, using self-discovery, using prayer, using reading, going to classes, all that good stuff. And so you hear this consciousness term tossed about a lot, right? So we've got, you might say there's cosmic consciousness, the consciousness that we are one with everything. Some people say, do you have a high consciousness? Do you have a low consciousness? An advanced consciousness, a superficial consciousness? There's so many different ways of labeling our consciousness. And what our Dr. James tells us is consciousness is God. And I love that, because consciousness really is that pure, undiluted energy that is everywhere present. That is who we are, and how we use that God energy is how we create this consciousness that we have at any given moment. Deepak Chopra says this about consciousness. He basically says it creates our reality. He says, since consciousness is the basis of all reality, any shift in consciousness changes every aspect of our reality. Reality is created by consciousness differentiating into cognition, moods, emotions, perceptions, behavior, speech, social interactions, environment, interaction with the forces of nature and biology. As consciousness evolves, these different aspects of consciousness always change. So here's the cool thing about consciousness. This is that vehicle that allows us to change our lives. And we teach that for everybody, to be able to look at your consciousness, see what's in it, see what's all about. If you can't find it, look in your world. How are you looking at your world? You'll see what your consciousness is holding on to that's creating whatever life experiences that might be wonderful, and those that you might want to change and shift. The cool thing about consciousness is, and how it relates to our reality, is that we're never stuck ever in our reality. We might think that we are, and I know that many people think that this physical reality is the end all be all. It's everything. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was just looking at our chat. Anyways, we might think that everything is physical. And what's really cool is that, and I know I'm so grateful, Reverend Gail in a couple of weeks is going to be talking about quantum physics. And it's really a hot topic right now, because we've been taught about Newtonian physics, which is all about this physical reality and everything is matter based. But quantum physics is teaching us basically that consciousness is actually preceding matter, that consciousness creates matter. And that's really a cool subject, because it's being shown through scientific experiences. So that falls onto us to be able to see that this reality that we create is coming from our own consciousness, and that we have the power to create our consciousness and mold our consciousness in such a way where our beliefs in infinite possibilities, a life that meets our dreams, and where our authentic can be expressed, where we're free, as Dr. Holmes says, we are free to have any kind of life that we want. And that's a consciousness. And that consciousness creates matter, which creates our reality. So it's really important to see how plastic we are, how flexible we are, but the work is in our own hands. It's not done by somebody else. We have to be willing to go within and move our consciousness, examine it, see what shifts and changes need to be made, so that we're at that heightened place of seeing oneness, of seeing the possibilities that we can bring forth into our life experience, and know that it's supported by nature. It is supported by the universe. It's supported by this great law of mind that we call law of mind, which is always acting upon our consciousness to bring forth our life. So it's really about thinking differently, thinking outside of the box. For those of you that don't know about quantum physics, or haven't heard that consciousness creates reality, open yourself up to seeing this and play with these terms, play with these concepts, because these concepts are there to open up your life so that you can live a better life. You can have health and wellness, prosperity, creativity, love, everything. It comes from the consciousness, and our consciousness houses our beliefs. And so it's time for us to shift our beliefs so that we can expand our consciousness and bring a better life into reality for us. Amit Goswami says this about consciousness. Quantum physics forces us to conclude that the domain of potentiality is really consciousness itself. Moreover, it shows us that the communication between what seems to be two separate objects, mind and matter, is mediated by consciousness. I love this because it just shows us how powerful we are. I know with life, things happen, experiences happen, and sometimes we feel like we're absolutely powerless because all these things have happened. And we don't realize that even though things happen in life, we have the power to change. We have the power to call forth into our life through our consciousness a better day, a new reality. No matter what's happened in our life, we always have that potential through our consciousness to bring forth into physical reality that which brings us joy, that which brings us happiness. All that good stuff comes through our consciousness and what we believe. And so we change our consciousness by doing many things. We can do prayer. Prayer work is a great changer of consciousness. I love that science of mind, even though we've been around for a while, these things that are coming up with quantum physics are proving out these ideas that Ernest Holmes has put forth to the world. And I know Reverend Cheryl is going to say, oh, it was before Ernest Holmes, because the ancient philosophies were already quantum physics. They are already talking about these things, and now the science is supporting that. So this stuff has been known. It's just that now our scientific world is proving it out. And so what we teach here, which is so magnificent, is we teach you how to change your consciousness if your life is needing some improvement. And we do it through prayer. We do it through study. We do it through affirmations. We do it through working with a practitioner or a minister. We do it by reminding you of the infinite power that you have and this infinite universe that has all possibilities to bring it all together so that you can be the creator of your life. And you can see that it's supported by science. And you can utilize all these wonderful tools that we teach to bring forth a new physical reality, because consciousness does influence matter. And I love that this is now really being taught in a very strong way. So the consciousness that we really, that we teach that is optimum for this life that is rich and boundless is a consciousness where we are anchored in this oneness, the oneness of all life, to know that we are one as God. We are one with everything and everyone. There is no separation. Also, to know that our consciousness heals because we reveal truth, that all the healing energy of the universe is within us simply by recognizing truth. That brings forth all the wholeness and the wellness of life. And just knowing that we are that infinite presence. Call it God, call it your higher power, call it love, whatever you like to call it. That power is everything that we are. To keep that in our consciousness is powerful. It's massive. And just to remember that we are pure consciousness. And something I didn't touch on here is that what is being taught in quantum physics is consciousness is not in our brains or in our bodies. It's bigger than that. It's outside of this this reality, this physical reality. Consciousness is everywhere. So that just goes to show that you are infinite and you are everywhere present, as is God. And so it's beyond just these little containers. Consciousness is just something that is beyond time and space, and we are in it, and it is in us. It is everywhere. And so it's really time for us to take our consciousness off of autopilot and use our consciousness with intention, with awareness, and with the understanding that, yes, you can change anything and create the consciousness that brings forth the greatest life for yourself. So, my beloveds, it is time for you to weigh in. And I believe it is going to be Reverend Gail.
I am happy to weigh in, and then I think after me will be Reverend Cheryl. Is that okay with you, Reverend Cheryl? Okay, awesome. So I am so glad that Dale brought up quantum science, because in contemplating this topic for today, that's really what came up with me. So one of her questions to us to contemplate is, why do we emphasize consciousness so much in spirituality? So I also sense this is the perfect opportunity, as Reverend Dale did, to reach into the study of quantum science to address this question. So first, consciousness. So scientists have long been trying to understand human consciousness. And as a result, many eminent philosophers, names like David Chalmers and Thomas Nagel, and scientists, you might have heard of Christoph Koch. They've all rejected the idea that consciousness is directly produced by brain processes. And they have turned to the alternative view that it is actually a fundamental quality of the universe. Consciousness is a fundamental quality of the universe. And I would say that another way of saying this is exactly what Reverend Dale expressed as Dr. James, is consciousness is God. So one of the reasons I'm in favor of this approach is that the idea of consciousness as a fundamental quality of the universe offers really elegant solutions to many problems which are difficult to explain using a standard scientific model. So I love practical examples, so I'm going to give you a couple of practical examples of this. So first, consciousness as a fundamental quality of the universe can actually explain the relationship between the brain and consciousness. So the brain doesn't produce consciousness like many people believe, but it really acts as a kind of receiver that picks up this fundamental consciousness, this fundamental quality of the universe that is all around us and transmits it into our own being. So if you really think about it, all the wonderful attributes that you assign to your mind, like intelligence, awareness, joy, wholeness, love, and clarity, they don't originate in the brain. The brain only appears intelligent because there is a super intelligent consciousness behind it. So second example, consciousness as a fundamental quality of the universe can explain the puzzle of altruism. So if we are, as a human species, fundamentally selfish, which is what all of our psychologists and psychiatrists, their science would tell, why should we be willing to risk our own lives for the sake of others? So altruism, as we all know from examples, is often instantaneous and spontaneous, particularly in a crisis situation, as if it's deeply, deeply instinctive. And from a spiritual perspective, however, which sees consciousness as fundamental to the universe, altruism is actually really easy to explain. And that's because it's related to compassion. Human shared fundamental consciousness means that it's possible for us to sense the feelings of others and to respond with altruistic acts. Since we share fundamental consciousness with other species too, it's possible for us to feel compassion with and to behave altruistically towards other species as well. So in summary, I believe we emphasize consciousness so much in spirituality because spirituality sees consciousness as fundamental to its very existence. And from a quantum science perspective, we really don't change our consciousness. Our consciousness is. What we do is we open our eyes, our awareness, our being to what already is. So with that quantum science explanation, I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you. That was fabulous. You know, I love that kind of thought. But just to take it a little deeper, you know, quantum physics really opened up a lot with this one experiment. It was called the split screen or the slit screen experiment, where they just basically they had this little gun and it fired at a screen, and it's just a stream of electrons. And so as they went through the slit, they acted like a wave, and they just kind of waved their way through. And then they show a pattern, a wave pattern on a piece of on a fabric or this pattern behind it on a wall. Let's just say it's a wall. And then they decided, well, if it's a wave, it must be a wave of electrons going through there. And so they took a camera and they started watching. And it was the craziest thing. Whenever they had the camera on the electrons, they behaved absolutely differently. They appeared as a particle. And but when they took the camera off of them, it came back as a wave. And so there's this great YouTube video. If you get a chance to watch it, it's an English professor. I can't think of who it is, an English physicist. And he says, okay, little electrons, we're going to go over here and we're not really watching you. We're not really got the camera on you. And so we're just going to pretend like we're not really watching you. But they were, and still it was coming in as an electron. So the thing that to me just blew my mind was, as Gail was saying, this is a conscious universe, but every particle, everything in this universe has consciousness, from a rock to this bottle of water. I mean, you know, it's just everything has consciousness. And when you are aware of that, you stop looking at the world as matter, like Gail said. You start looking at it as this place where everything is around you is a vibrational energy, and you're just a part of it. And for me, that is always, like Gail said, Reverend Gail said, always, always present, but somehow we have blocked that knowledge within ourselves. And that's why, you know, we think, oh, I had this aha moment. You know, all of a sudden, oh, I see the truth. Well, no, the truth has always been there. You have just had your blinders on and not willing to open your mind up and your heart up to that reality. And so for me, quantum physics explains it all. Explains all the things that I was seeking all of my life. And then I found science of mind, and I sort of kind of, you know, I resonated with it in the sense that it's the consciousness of being awakened and being aware that I am fundamental. I am a fundamental part of the entire universe. And that changes your thinking about yourself. How can I be less than? How can I be lacking when I am a fundamental part of the whole? Wow, what a concept. It really brings your awareness up. It's not an ego thing, and it's not an arrogance thing. It's just this knowing that just comes across, and you just feel it. It's beautiful. Anyway, so who's going to go next? Reverend William, I will assume that's you.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I mean, every one of you ladies sharing, that's definitely has opened my eyes. Thank you for putting that up. I was just going to comment about that. We have a comment from David Flint. Life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for your evolution, for the evolution of your consciousness. How do you know this is the experience you need? Because it is the experience you are having at that moment. And that's from Eckhart Tolle. Thank you, David, for sharing with us and for the interaction. Now, I love to do analogies. And here we are talking about quantum physics and quantum theories. And if you haven't studied any of that sort of stuff, it's going right over your head. You're like, okay, what does that have to do with consciousness? Because consciousness, if I'm awake, I'm conscious. No, we're talking about something a lot different than that. So here's my analogy I'd like to put forth. Again, using a car, using your truck, whatever vehicle that you imagine yourself to be in, that vehicle is you. It's your body. Like, I'm a 1966. I'm a classic, you know. You know, whatever year you're born, that's your body style. That's, you know, and that's great. But your mind, who I am in relationship to my body type, as if I was a car, is the driver, is the consciousness. So imagine yourself being this car driving down the road, and left or right, you have all these options. Well, the car itself, the body itself, your body itself, doesn't determine whether you want to go left or right. It's the driver inside the car. That's your mind. Your mind inside your body determines and directs where you want to turn. In other words, how you want to experience life. But consciousness is more than just your individual life. And that's what the ladies here are talking about when we're talking about quantum physics. Science and spirituality, we're at such a wonderful time where before were those two back in the ancient times. Spirituality and science were one in the same. It somehow split and diverged to where people were saying, okay, there's only science. And then there's religion being something different. We are now coming back and merging the two and realizing that spirituality and science aren't two separate things. They are one and the same. And so as we realize that life and science, there are rules. There's rules to the game. And how we think and how we interact and how we deal with life from a spiritual level, from a conscious level, which is yourself behind yourself. And that might be getting a little deep. But just again, think of your consciousness, your spiritual self being the driver inside the car. But even in back of that, there is the life itself. Dr. Joe, and this blew my mind when I first heard it, when I was first going to one of his classes, he was talking about thought and trying to describe and allow you to understand the expansiveness of spirit. I'm sure you've heard that God is all there is. It's always been. But when you really sit down and really think about, well, always been, how does that happen? And he thought, and he told and gave an example of anything. Let's say a laser beam. The idea of a laser beam and how to manufacture and how to harness that power to create that laser beam. Back when the universe, or let's not even go back that far, back when we as human beings were evolving, the idea of laser was at that moment. It was through our own consciousness and our ability to raise our consciousness to that level to be equal to that which wants to be expressed and created in form. That is where spirituality and life come together and merge. So as you listen to us, and we may be in the deep end for you at this moment. You might be in the 3-foot shallow end of the pool. That is okay. Guess what? You're still in the pool. You are still immersed in the water of life. Woo, that gave me some God bumps right there. I love it when stuff like this happens. But even though you may not be able to grasp the totality of what we're talking about here, the fact that you're hearing it, the fact that there is something within inside of you that is, I'm sure, clicking and going, wait a minute, I've thought about something like that, but I didn't know how to articulate it. That's okay. Just be where you are. Enjoy where you are. But again, your consciousness, that thought, that inner self within yourself, what you're focusing on, what you want to experience, like David Flint had made in a comment, that is the experience that you're having. But at any time, you can change the path upon which the direction that you're going. And know this, that regardless of where your path goes, it is always unfolding and becoming more of itself. You are, like Reverend Dale's question, who were we 10 years ago? A lot of us are very similar. Like the Reverend Gail said, her consciousness was pretty much the same, but yet it's expanded. Who you were 10 years ago is different than who you are today. And who you're going to be in 10 years is all done through your consciousness. all done through thought. Thought, as Dr. Joe says, thought becomes the thing. I love that. The thought becomes the thing. The spiritual pasta maker. Whatever you put into the pasta maker, it doesn't care. It is the law. It just creates. It just takes your thoughts, your consciousness, what you want to experience, and manifests it into form for us to enjoy, for us to raise our consciousness to an even higher plateau and change the trajectory of our life. And yes, having the compassion for those around us. As your consciousness raises and you become more conscious of yourself, you realize that your friends, beyond your friends, anyone, anything is a part of you. There is no separation because, again, consciously, we are all just spirit in action. And when you can know, not think, not hope, but know that you are that energy, it truly does change on a human level, on a physical level. Your consciousness at that level, not the spiritual consciousness, but your consciousness of awareness in this life. It changes it and causes peace, happiness, and a lust for life. When you can know that and experience that and raise your consciousness, which these ladies and myself are here to help you do, and the center is here to help you do, life unfolds perfectly. Reverend Dale, I'd like to see what you have to say about that deep into the pool that I just came out of. I'm getting out of the water, I'm putting towel on, I'm drying off, and I'm going to sit in my lawn chair and just listen to you.
I don't know if there are words. I was going, hallelujah. You're so fun. Your growth, I must say, my friend, your growth it just shows up every single week here in our time together. I just watching you just really express yourself and present yourself as this minister. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, Reverend William, but when you were just starting to attend the center and you were doing a lot of work, I looked at you and I think I was having a session or something with someone, and I said, you're going to be a practitioner. And you're like, no, I have no desire to do that. You just had that energy about you, and I'm so proud of you. That's all I can say. So I want to emphasize a lot of what you said as well, but I just want to talk about this reality, which I love about quantum physics and understanding the power of our consciousness to create from the invisible realm. And this is a lot of what quantum physics is telling us. It's what Thomas Troward said, what Ernest Holmes said, Lao Tzu, everybody. It says, they tell us that there's a greater place to create. We don't create from matter. We create from a place where there's infinite ideas and potentiality. And one thing that excites me to this day about consciousness being what we're now focusing on as the place where life is created from, to me, it's exciting because there's more than just what's happening here on planet Earth or in this place called matter. And that's what this whole blending and coming together, like Reverend William was saying, of spirituality and science finally coming together, because they're saying the same thing, that there's a greater field of potential that we actually bring forth the things of this world. And something I just want to bring a personal thing in, because maybe all of you guys have had evidence, and you at home as well. You've seen this evidence of maybe you call it mind over matter, but I remember my mom had, many of you know, she had quite the health issue for, gosh, like 12 years. And she had had a second series of strokes. And my sister and I were with the doctor, and he said, oh, your mom, 3 months, she's probably not going to be on this plane anymore. And I remember my instant reaction was, you don't know my mom and you don't know her consciousness. So 8 years later was when she made her transition. But this thing about really consciousness is the governing force of our physical experience is so powerful and so wonderful. And I think about the things that are happening in our world right now. And when I hear people saying, I know the facts about what's going on in our world globally with the global warming and all that. But I go to that place of consciousness that says, you know what, there's ideas that have not been brought forward that are going to contribute to the healing of this planet. So even though there's a lot of gloom and doom, I know that my consciousness knows there's a greater reality where people are open to bringing forth ideas that are going to allow for us to turn the corner and create a planet that is going to be rejuvenated. So I just think this opening up of our consciousness, of our awareness of what's possible is where all these great ideas are going to come into our world by means of those that are ready to bring them into the world, so that we can have peace, so that we can have harmony, we can have good conversations where we stop having so much dividedness or divisiveness in our society. So that consciousness of knowing all is possible, to me, is really a great life-affirming way to move through this world. Reverend Gail, you are next.
Thank you. So as we are getting close to the end of our time together with this absolutely exhilarating topic, I'd like to invite my cohorts to share some closing comments if you have them. Reverend William, Reverend Cheryl, Reverend Dale, any closing comments? No? Okay, I'll jump in with a couple things then real quick. So the truth is always there, is something that Reverend Cheryl said a few minutes ago. And I love that. And I really want to emphasize that, because as I close out today, I just want to expand on this a little bit. And it's because one of my main areas of interest as a metaphysician is where it's a concept that's called awakening experiences. And I don't think we've expanded on this as much yet. And it's really when human awareness intensifies and expands, as we've all talked about. And we experience a sense of oneness with other human beings, nature, or the world as a whole. And we experience a sense of oneness because oneness is the fundamental reality of all things. Nothing changes in our consciousness. Instead, we have an awakening experience. So I believe the idea of consciousness as a fundamental quality of the universe holds a great deal of weight. It may be that the best way to understand the world is not through science or spirituality alone, but through an approach which combines them both. Mm-hmm. As Reverend Williams said, science and spirituality are one and the same. So with that, I think I will go ahead and close this amazing space. So this brings us to the close of our exploration today. It was, what is consciousness and why is it important? And we really want to thank all of you for joining us. And we invite you to come back next week when we expand on a new spiritual curiosity. It's called the duality inherent in beauty, and it's going to be facilitated by Reverend Cheryl Guess. So let's take a deep breath in together and make the transition into the part of this time together where we support our center financially. You'll see a message on your screen directing your donation, or you may call the center. We are all very blessed by all of you that support our center. And as you choose to make a donation today, we welcome it gratefully. We've got a great live stream lineup this week and every week. So mark your calendars for 10 a.m. every day, easy to remember, because we've got a great program in store for you. Take a look at our website, where you'll find a banner that provides a detailed explanation of each 10 a.m. offering. And in addition to 10 a.m., please enjoy us at 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning for our Power of 8 Circle, and at 5 p.m. on Thursdays for the Social 8. Reverend Dale, I think you've got a special offering to share with us today as well.
I do. Thank you, Reverend Gail. This Sunday at 12:30 p.m. is the monthly Spirit of Women get-together. So if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. Audrey Collier is going to be our special guest, and we're actually going to be doing some yoga, qigong, Pilates. So if you want to bring a mat and make sure you have a chair, she's going to be teaching to all physical levels, just very mild. But she blends mind and body and spirit together. So it's going to be a wonderful time together. And just there'll be a link on, there'll be actually, I think, an email, and on our homepage, the scrolling banners, you'll find a link on the Spirit of Women. So just pop in and join us. It's been wonderful getting to know each other, to have spiritual community with women during this time. So I invite you to join us 12:30 this Sunday. Thank you, Reverend Gail.
Reverend Dale, you're most welcome. So next Tuesday, March 23rd at 10 a.m., please join me as I facilitate Grief and Loss as Transformation, which focuses on what happens at a soul level during the journey of loss and bereavement, and how to best support soul healing after a big loss. So who will this class benefit? Well, my answer is everyone, because we all experience loss, and we are all called at different points in our lives to support other people and their families in their journeys through loss. So with those introductions and announcements, please join me now for our closing benediction. As I say goodbye, and thank you to each and every person that is here today, I am so grateful to recognize that divine blueprint, that amazing pure consciousness operating through and as my very life. I know each person here as the center of creative power, and as such, I affirm all are the perfect blueprint of life. With a joyous heart around this truth, I release this word as law, and as I do, I trust it, I accept it, and I simply let go and let God do its work. Please join me in saying, and so it is.